Everybody is here. Okay.
Yeah, good morning, ma'am, from Bangalore.
Good morning.
A quick suggestion. If you ask the coordinator to mute all, so that you have lesser feedback.
No. So, sir, coordinator, this is Google Meet. Huh? Sir is trying to join. Huh? Anjali?
Yes, I'm admitting, ma'am. I'm admitting, everybody I'm admitting. I've not received the message of joining.
सागर का फोन है तो
नहीं sorry
मैं पाठवते नहीं just 1 minute only. No, I'm just trying to send out. मी माधवला पाठवले नवीन लिंक.
नवीन वाले अप्रूवल मागतोय का फक्त. ठीक आहे मॅम, नवीन लिंकच आहे त्यांची.
हो का?
हां, ओके. अप्रूवलच मागतोय फक्त.
नाही मग केलंय सगळ्यांना.
आयटीचं पर्सन लच लिंक पाठवली.
Anjali, have you approved, because Muzumdar sir is also trying to join?
Yes, ma'am.
Muzumdar sir is trying to join.
Yes, ma'am. We are on. No. Actually, I have not received his message. We are admitting everybody.
Okay. Just watch carefully, Kanvidya ma'am.
Yes.
I think she's trying to join from her laptop.
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, Dr. Saraf. Nice to see you here.
मला असं येतच नाही ऍडमिट करा म्हणून, कारण बाय डिफॉल्ट आयटीने सगळ्यांना ऍडमिट केलं.
Yeah, we are admitting everybody.
Pratima.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I spoke to sir. I spoke to sir just now, and
yes, ma'am.
Nitin is connecting.
Okay, ma'am.
But you can't see me, right? Can you?
Ma'am, we can't see you. We can hear you, ma'am.
No, but my video is on. I don't know.
Ma'am, we can hear you.
Anyway, it's okay. You all have seen me enough, so you can hear me.
No, ma'am. Would love to see you again.
Anyway, till sir joins.
Yes, ma'am.
Has everybody come in? So,
yes, ma'am. A lot of people. I would request everybody to please mute. All other participants to please mute. Dr. Nurika can stay unmuted, please, but the rest should please go on mute.
So we are waiting for Muzumdar sir to join. Nitin is trying to connect him through the university office. So till such time, can you just tell us, what is this whole talk about?
Yes, ma'am. So a very good morning to all of you on the occasion of World Environment Day. We do this session at SEMHRD every year. But this year, of course, we are additionally blessed because you are here, and we're so happy that Dr. Muzumdar is also going to join. Incidentally, Dr. Gurdas is on the Biodiversity Committee of SIU, and he is going to draw from that experience to talk about how you can maintain biodiversity, improve, also help in environment management, the natural environment, of course. And a quick introduction about him: he is a trustee of the Ecological Society. He is the founding member of Ram Nadi Restoration Mission for restoring Ram Nadi, member of the Meena Nadi Restoration Team. He's working with the Pani Panchayat for improving watershed ecosystems in dryland areas of Saswad. He's a team member of Pune International Center in Climate Collective Project. He's worked with PMRDA recently through Symbiosis, and we have Dr. Vidya ma'am to thank for that, and the Pune International Center for Ecological Improvements in the Pune Metropolitan Regional Plan. So, you know, he's been
And
involved in.
I would like to add here that Mr. Aditya Thackeray was heavily impressed with Mr. Gurudas, Professor Gurudas Mulkar.
Ma'am, he is impressive. So therefore, he is at SCMHRD. Or we are impressive because he is here. Whatever, whichever way you like to put it. Yeah. So all yours, Dr. Gurudas. Ma'am, actually, we were very keen that, you know, you and Mozumdar sir speak a bit about the biodiversity.
Can we just wait for sir to join? I mean, if someone from your office can connect with Nitin
Yes,
at
yes, ma'am.
SIU, because he is wanting to join, and you'll have to just give him a little brief on what you want him to. I mean, what again, the same thing you can repeat.
Yes, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I will do that.
So till such time that sir joins, maybe offline, Pratima, someone from your office can actually coordinate with Nitin.
Yes, ma'am. Netra is doing that, ma'am. She's coordinating with Nitin. So in a minute.
So, I mean, just to all the colleagues of Symbiosis who are here, it's first of all on the World Environment Day. I'm very glad that SCMHRD has been doing this.
Ma'am, sir.
In fact, I wasn't aware of you all holding a lecture like this every year, but it's nice, and I wish this lecture was, you know, for students. So I hope the recording goes to the students of SCMHRD and even other students, so we could even put it up on our SIU handle.
Yes, ma'am.
Get aware. I think as a university we've done a lot, but we don't capture it. Sir has joined.
Yes, sir. Tell them.
You can welcome and tell sir.
Yes, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I would request everybody else to please go on mute. There is disturbance. Audio mute, please. Good morning, Mozumdar sir. It's a pleasure and an honor to welcome you to this virtual session on the occasion of World Environment Day. You know, we hold this session every year. This year, Dr. Gurudas Mulkar is going to speak about essentially the biodiversity project that is being run at SIU. Of course, he draws from multiple other experiences. He's a trustee of the Ecological Society. He's a founding member of Ram Nadi Restoration Mission for restoring Ram Nadi, member of Meena Nadi Restoration Team. He's working with Pani Panchayat for improving watershed ecosystem in the dryland areas of Satswad. He's a team member of PIC in Climate Collective Project, worked with PMRDA recently through SIU. Thanks to Vidya ma'am for that. And PIC for ecological improvements in the PMRDA. I'm going to request Mozumdar sir to please talk about this unique initiative at SIU about the biodiversity project and the committee that he has set up. We are honored to have you here. Thank you so much. We'd really like it if you can tell us what gave you the inspiration to start off on this mission.
I can see you, but can you see me?
Yes, sir, we can see you and hear you as well.
Great, great. So first of all, let me wish you a happy Environment Day.
Thank you, sir.
And I'm very happy that SCMHRD has selected this Environmental Day to organize such a webinar. I'm really happy. That only shows that your institution is not only interested in business management, but also environmental management. Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Gurudas, would you like to, sir, the biodiversity project badal thoda sa sangal ka amala?
See, what happened was, when this hill was selected for locating our university campus, I thought that it would be nice and proper for us to survey flora, fauna, and even rocks on the hill. Because I thought that as we keep on building more and more buildings, it is likely that the natural flora and fauna will undergo sea change. Perhaps we may interfere with their natural balance, and it is likely that some birds or plant species may even become extinct. So we thought that before we intrude into the nature's life, plants and birds, we must at least record the plants and animals which are there on the hill camp, on this lovely hill. So I contacted Dr. Rao, Dr. Nulkar, and later on Shilpa Aute also joined us. And then a thought came to us that why not establish a small department called Symbiosis SIU Environmental Department. And that is how a small committee was constituted, which consisted of all these members in addition to outside experts. And I'm very happy that first volume of Wonders of Nature on Symbiosis campus was published. Later on, Mr. Nulkar and Dr. Rao, along with Shilpa, thought that the plant species which are recorded in the book were inadequate. There were more plant species on the campus, and they therefore revised and enlarged the book which was already published. I'm very happy that this team, headed by Dr. Nulkar and Dr. Rao and Shilpa, also contacted experts from outside, and they came out with a beautiful book called Flora of SIU Campus. The story didn't end there. Then we thought that why not publish the fauna of SIU Campus? And they did a wonderful job, and fauna of SIU Campus was published. Similarly, the hill consists of many rocks. And Dr. Thagade, who happened to be my student at Ferguson College, I requested him, why not survey even the rocks on the hill? And he, along with his erstwhile student, Dr. Madliya, from Geology Department of Pune University, along with their students, they also surveyed the rocks. And they came out with beautiful and surprising findings. They noticed that some of the rocks were very rare. Some of the rock formations were unique to SIU Hill. And that is how Singing Rock, you know why I gave the name of for that book. Shri Shantaram's movie, Gaya Patharone, even rocks sing. And so we gave that name, Singing Rocks, to that geological survey of this campus. This is how we are perhaps the first university, I don't say world or India, but perhaps first in Maharashtra at least, which has published not only fauna, flora, but even rocks. And these three elements of nature together constitute, I believe, what we call environment. Then a small committee was also constituted. It periodically meets, and Dr. Nulkar and Dr. Rao decided that we should have interpretation center. He will perhaps talk more about interpretation center than I, but this is another innovative and novel idea to have interpretation center on our campus so that the visitors will come to know once for all about plants, animals, rocks, ecosystem, and whatnot. We have created 2 small bandaras on the campus. And believe you me, those bandaras have added more animals, new animals, rare animals to this campus, as also the plants. This is how the biodiversity activity is taking place, and I'm sure that it will grow from year to year. I must also warn the posterity that we must stop constructing more and more buildings. More buildings means less plant species, less animal species. Now there was suggestion that we should have extension to the annex hostel. But it was Shilpa who came to me and persuaded with solid reason. She said that, sir, please don't do it, because that is the only big spot your biodiversity is intact, and although it appears to you that it consists of only grasses and herbs and shrubs, no, it is home to many insects, many animals, and that is how I persuaded Vidya, because she was very eager to construct that hostel. Please don't construct hostel at this spot. You construct as many hostels as you want elsewhere. This is how this biodiversity committee acts like a speed breaker. We are interested in creating more buildings, more institutions. More institutions mean more building. More buildings means more destruction of environment. So this biodiversity committee, which acts as a speed breaker, is also a watchdog. And therefore we decided that unless biodiversity gives clearance, we will not construct any more building. Thank you. These are the thoughts on Environmental Day. Proceed further.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Pleasure listening to you as always. Your visionary leader has inspired Symbiosis to reach this stage, and I hope we can take your conservation attitude further and forward as well. Vidya ma'am, would you like to say a few words before we begin with Gurudas's session?
Oh yes, actually sir has said it all, and I wanted to actually quote this anecdote where I wanted to construct a hostel wing near the annex building, but the biodiversity committee did not pass through our proposal, and I went to sir and I said, more than anything we require hostels for students, and he said, if the biodiversity has not allowed you, I will not allow you to construct anything. So I think that says it all. But I would also like to add one more thing, that the government of Switzerland has a 2000 watts committee which they have formed, and so the president of this 2000 watts committee, it's through the municipal corporation there, and the government of Switzerland has been exactly in the same way. They want to conserve the environment and have less less destruction of environment by creating buildings and so on, and of course conserve energy. So we had the president, Mr. Binkert, who visited us, and he was so fascinated by the work in biodiversity that we do and how we've conserved nature on the hilltop, that now we are in talks with him, and a new hostel that is coming up on a land that has been allowed to us allowed to be constructed by the biodiversity committee and of course the management of Symbiosis. We are constructing a hostel as per the requirements of the 2000 watt city corporation. This means that it will conserve a lot of energy, and the whole design has been changed by them, and there will be a funding that will come through the Switzerland government also. And our campus was selected by PMRDA, and that's how Gurudas is and Dr. Rao are involved with the PMRDA department, which is a big thing for us. So I think we are more eager to listen to Gurudas, and I think you can proceed with the webinar.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to have both of you here. Dr. Gurudas, all yours. You're more privileged than any one of us has ever been.
Thank you so much for the kind words, Dr. Muzumdar sir, as well as Dr. Vidya. Just give me 1 minute until I'm able to share my screen. Yeah, am I visible? The slideshow, is it visible to all?
Now, yes.
Yes.
Yes, it is. Yes,
okay. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you so much, Dr. Muzumdar as well as Dr. Vidya, for this thing. What I'm doing right now is I'm trying to keep the butterflies in my stomach down because I'm staring at a screen which has got the collective wisdom of some of the best educational leaders, some of the best teachers, and some of the best researchers. So it's the next 1 hour is really going to be testing for me. I'm going to walk the rope literally on a very tall building. So I'm sure I will have your support. And so if there is any pitfall, please let me know. I'm going to, I think somebody needs to put his mic on mute. Can you please check if your mics are on mute? Somebody's mic is yet on. Hello, we are getting some disturbance. Can everybody please switch off their microphone?
Anjali, the only mic that is on is, I think, Muzumdar sir's. So if you can connect with them and just tell them to put that on mute. I think that is where the disturbance is coming from.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you.
Right. So thank you so much. I'm going to start my session, and this is going to be the overall flow that I'll talk about today. As you saw in the title slide, I want to talk a little bit about biological diversity and ecosystems, a concept which is unfortunately less known in society. So first I'll talk about the physical diversity, and I'm going to just time. Yeah. I hope you can see my laser point.
Yes, yes.
So first I'll talk about the physical diversity, then biological diversity, and then I'll come to ecosystems, and finally I'll try to show the connection between nature and economy, with a question that do we really understand nature? And I'll give you several examples to help you think about this question. And finally, I'll talk about the SIU case study. We're getting a lot of disturbance.
Gurudas, I'm trying to reach sir's office. I think his microphone is still on. So, Pratima, someone will inform.
No problem. I'll continue. Right. So, and finally, I'll talk about the SIU Loveday case study and how we can actually, all of us can go from merely admiration of nature to conservation of nature. Yeah. So this is, we'll see, is somewhere like this, and we are the only very fortunate planet to have this kind of a diversity which you see there. And that brings me to the first question. What is it that allowed only Earth to have this kind of life form, and why not some other planet? Therefore, you know, the key reason for this is that we are the only planet fortunate to have water in liquid form. All the other planets have water, but in another form. It's either in a gaseous form or in a solid form, like in Pluto, and the planets which are further away from that are in a solid form, which is in ice. But we are the only fortunate, and therefore that makes us realize the critical importance of our orbit. You know, the reason why we got this orbit is a celestial reason. So we have no idea about how we got this orbit. But we really hit the orbital jackpot. We are exactly at a point today which is not too close and not too far from the sun. A little closer and we would never have got liquid water. A little farther and it would always have been in solid form. So the orbit was the first dramatic coincidence that we had, is why we are going to talk about biodiversity. Otherwise, we would have been like Mars. The second most important coincidence was when our Earth was formed around 4.6 billion years. And immediately around 4.5 billion years ago, a huge meteorite hit the Earth. And this meteorite did two very important things. This meteorite actually pulled out a chunk from the Earth, which became the Pacific Ocean, and that chunk, because of gravity, you know, the celestial sculpture, which is gravity, it started getting to work, and it formed the moon. The moon was able to stabilize our orbit. Till that time, around 100 million years, our orbit was not very stable. But after the moon started revolving around us, we got a much more stable orbit, and we are one of the most stable orbits that we have today in the planet. Mercury's orbit is eccentric. You know, it goes so close and it comes so far. Pluto's orbit is also chaotic. It comes so close to the sun and goes very far away. So we were typically at a point which, the second thing which that meteorite struck happened is that it gave us our axial tilt. Now, this 23.5 degrees is extremely critical for life forms on Earth. And I'll come to that, why we have that. But because of this exact 23.35 degrees Celsius, we get our seasons today. These seasons would not have been possible we got this axial tilt. Because of this, we are now able to get the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn here. You know, so the sunlight hits here exactly at 90 degrees Celsius, and some parts are in perennial snow. So these are the permafrost regions, and these are the tropical climatic zones and the temperate climatic zone. So the difference in the seasons on the planet and the difference in the amount of sunlight the planet gets is purely a function of our axial tilt, which was very important. And therefore, over time, once it started raining, once we reached the threshold, you know, Earth was essentially a very hot, molten piece of, you know, just a solid piece which took over 1 billion years to cool down. But after we started cooling down, then we were able to trigger that threshold temperature where water started condensing, and it rained for thousands of years. After it started raining for thousands of years, we started getting the oceans filled up. And as the oceans filled up, the temperature started plummeting down further and further. Mineral mixing started. Because there is liquid water, only then can a mineral in place A go and deposit in some other place B and mix with it. So erosion and deposition were two critical processes which came about only because of liquid water. The moon has a lot of minerals, the Mars has a lot of minerals, but they can't mix with each other because there's no liquid water. So the mineral mixing and everything, all of these kind of situations were able to give the first form of life, which you see here is the prokaryote. And that from there on began the journey which we see today. We are able to see this here. So the first thing which I want to impress upon you is that the physical diversity is what becomes the most important. Look at this photograph on this right, and look at the photograph of Mars. You know, here you see different sunlight. You have mountains, you have altitudes, you have minerals, temperature is different here, the rainfall, soil, rivers, water body. None of this is seen in this particular photograph. You know, it's just one simple photograph with exactly the same amount of sunlight reaching, temperature is constant, altitudes are not as defined as they are on the planet, and therefore, because the physical diversity is so weak, and on Earth the physical diversity is so rich, that has made a lot of difference. Stop thinking about the planet Earth at the moment. Just look at Maharashtra. Look at the physical diversity of Maharashtra. We have got 8 different agroclimatic zones here, and therefore the soils are different. The amount of rainfall reaching there is different. Soil moisture is different. The temperatures are different, and that gives rise to completely different flora. What you see in Vidarbha is not the same as what you see in Konkan. What you see in the crestline of Sahyadri is not the same as what you see in Gadchiroli. And that is a very small piece of India we are talking about. We are not talking about the entire India. If we talk about the entire India, we have 10 different biogeographic zones. Just look at those amount of zones. The first one here is the Trans-Himalayan zone. So the Ladakh and the Tibetan zone, which is beyond Himalayan. Then you have the Himalayan zone here too. You have deserts, you have semi-arid zones, you have the Western Ghats, the Deccan Plateau, so on and so forth. All of these. Each one of these zones have got different physical diversity. That becomes the critical defining factor for these biogeographic zones. Because there is difference in the physical diversity, only then are you able to get any biological diversity there. And therefore, you will see difference in the flora in Meghalaya and that in Rajasthan. You will not see the same flora in Tamil Nadu that you see in Ladakh, or what you see in Himalaya will be different from that. Look at this. In 1968, there were 2 scientists called Champion and Seth who did a classification of Indian forest. And they grouped the forests in India into 16 different groups. And each one of these groups further had subgroups. So totally we have 200 different types of forest groups in India. Can you imagine? We look at forest as one forest. You go to Konkan, it's a forest. It's Tadoba, it's a forest. It isn't like that. There is tremendous difference in the species composition and the species population that is present in Tadoba than it is there in the Himalayan bioreserve zone. Totally different. Meghalaya will be a completely different species population, and that is what makes a tropical climatic country so significantly different from a temperate climate like Germany or UK. We have 16 different forest types and 200 different forest classes. So you starting with the tropical wet evergreen, you have the littoral swarm forest. You know, these exist around the Brahmaputra. Somewhere here you will see. Some of the swarm forest also exist in the northern part of Karnataka near Sirsi. You know, you have such a diverse climate. Then you have a complete dry alpine scrub. It's almost like the alpine meadows which you find here. And you have Himalayan dry temperate forests, subtropical fine, so a variety of forests which are there in India. And therefore, if you have a diversity in the primary food producers, you know, these are the only organisms on the planet who make their own food. Nobody else makes their own food. We and all of us survive with on plants. So because they make their own food, they don't need locomotion. They're just rooted to one place. They just have to take the sun's energy and the soil nutrients, and they can regenerate. All of us have to walk towards a food, and therefore we have locomotion. So because we have a diversity in the primary food producers, we will see that there is diversity in food availability. So the kind of food which is available in Himalaya is different from the kind of food which is available in the Western Ghats. The sort of food which is available in Rajasthan is different from Meghalaya, and that creates a difference. This exactly corroborates Darwin's theory. So if you remember, you know, in school days we learned about Charles Darwin and how we went about the HMS Beagle to Galapagos, and in the Galapagos Islands, which is essentially an archipelago. It's a collection of a lot of islands in the Pacific. And he went on each of these islands. They were not too far and not too close, but the bird could not fly there. And he observed one bird there, which is the finch. This is the finch. This is the finch bird here. And on every island, he saw that the finch had different types of beaks and different sizes. That was one species, but it had different beak sizes. And he was able to do his study on those Galapagos Islands for a couple of months, and he realized because the food available in each of those islands was different, these beaks are different. So some of them you will see the frugivorous beak. They eat fruit. That will eat insects. Some of them will be graminivores, like the chimney, so they will be able to break a pod and eat the seeds. So whatever flora was available, these finches were able to evolve around that, and that corroborated Darwin's theory of evolution. So because we have primary food producers, because we have habitat diversity, then speciation starts happening. And that one prokaryote which we saw in the earlier slide now dramatically transforms into the Royal Bengal tiger, into the hammer-headed shark, into the beautiful rose finch, into the Jezebel butterfly, into all of these, and including Homo sapiens. So into all of these different species. All of us are born from that one single-celled prokaryote which we saw in the earlier slide. And that is what is the drama of speciation on this planet is taking place. So now we have just seen a background about why this biodiversity is happening. Look at the biological diversity on the planet. So these are the biomes on the planet, and you will see that we have 18 biomes on the planet, you know, which means these are biogeographic zones. So biome is a collection of flora and fauna together is different in each state. So for example, the tundras are different from the taigas. The xeric shrubland, which mainly has the xerophytic shrubs, is different from the dry steppe, which is the grassland. The alpine tundra is different from montane forest. All of these. So these will have a different collection of fauna as well as flora, and you'll see different kinds of species there. So to summarize what we have just looked at, you know, the first is the physical diversity. That gives rise to a difference in the primary producers, which is the floral diversity. Physical diversity also gives rise to habitat diversity. There are some high altitude zones, some low altitude zones, some with an impervious soil, some with a very fragile soil. So all these create the habitat diversity. Because of the food diversity, you get rise to the faunal diversity. And because of all of this, you are able to get the food chain, and that creates the biological diversity. So the biological diversity is a manifestation of the physical features of the place, of the landscape. And therefore, if you do anything to the physical feature, then there is definitely some effect going to happen on the biological diversity. And this is something which we don't realize. We just simply cannot save the tiger without saving the landscape. We cannot save the Great Indian bustard without doing something to the landscape at Nanaj and Solapur. It's not about saving one species, but it's about saving the physical diversity, the floral diversity, and then the faunal diversity. It's a very straightforward way which nature has told us to reach that. Look at that. Because of the physical diversity of India, today we have 8% of the flora in the world. We have less than 3% of land, but we have 8% of flora. We have over nearly 7% of the fauna of the planet is found in India. And this is just what we have been able to describe. We have just been able to describe 14 million species in fauna and about 3.9 lakh species in flora. There are literally thousands of species which scientists have not yet described. So we really don't know whether this is 8% or this is 18% or this is 6% or this is 16%. And yet we will see this diversity. Okay, I just wanted to explain what we have done on this slide. And you see this beautiful picture here with flowing water and a lot of trees, right? Look at the physical diversity. Here you see water, soil, rocks, pools, waterfalls, riffles, flows, there is erosion, there is deposition, there are crevices. All of this you will see here. And because this is there, you will see a burst of life. You will see phytoplanktons, there are some herbs, there are some shrubs, there are large trees. There are zooplanktons which are there in the water. There are insects which are feeding on them. There are fish which are feeding on the zooplanktons as well as the insect. There are crustaceans which are moving onto land and trying to find out. There are reptiles who are living on them. There are amphibians, there are birds, there are mammals. So all of this is possible only because of this on the right hand side. If you take away the right hand side, then the left hand side starts getting weaker and weaker. And therefore, it is very important also to conserve the riverine ecosystem that we've been doing here in this. So look at India, and I definitely would like to draw your attention to India. If you look at the European countries, if you look at the temperate climatic countries, most of them are spread around a latitude, right? On the other hand, India is spread around a longitude. Look at this. Look at our height. This spans somewhere around 28 degrees latitude. Amazing. Amount of sunlight reaching Ladakh is different from the amount of sunlight reaching Kanyakumari. The amount of rainfall hitting Meghalaya is different from the amount of rainfall hitting the greater run of Kutch. So the sunlight, soil, water, climate, all of this is totally different for India. And therefore the flora, as we saw, is different. Because the flora is different, the fauna is different. Because both of these are different, the human relationship with nature is different, right? What is worshipped in Tamil Nadu is probably eaten in Meghalaya. The trees which are sacred in Rajasthan are not the same as the trees which are sacred in Konkan. They are totally different. So the human relationship of people within India has dramatically diverged. The culture, the ideas about quality of life, what is welfare to Rajasthan will be different from what is welfare to Ladakh. Our world views are different. So look at that. You know, the physical diversity has given rise to biological diversity. And the biological diversity has given rise to social diversity. There is a very strong connection between all of this that we see on the planet. Right? So a little bit about ecosystem. We looked at what is biodiversity. And I just want to very quickly explain what are ecosystems. So here at the top you see the sunlight, and that's the only source of energy on the planet. We all are solar powered organisms. Each one of us is a solar powered organism. So on one side, if you look at a landscape, there is sunlight falling. On one hand, there are the biotic elements of the landscape. You have the plants, the animals, and the other organisms. On the other side, you have the abiotic, climate, landforms, rocks, soil, water, the physical diversity. Continuously, there is an exchange of matter and energy between them. That drop of sunlight which is falling on the soil is giving rise to life which is manifesting out as flora. That flora is being eaten by something else. So there is matter which is converted from sunlight into biomass. That biomass is eaten by insects and browsers and ungulates, and those ungulates are eaten by tigers and other carnivores. So continuously in the landscape there is a transformation of matter and energy, and that is what is an ecosystem. If you have understood this, then you have understood what is an ecosystem. That's it. On the planet, there are millions of ecosystems, small and large, which are interacting with each other. Now, if there is a river ecosystem and there is a desert ecosystem, then that desert ecosystem is interacting with the river ecosystem in Rajasthan. If there is a mountain ecosystem and there is a stream ecosystem, there is continuous give and take between the stream ecosystem and the mountain ecosystem. And therefore, I said that there are interactions between all these millions of ecosystems which you see on the planet. And to make this simpler for understanding, I'm putting it into words that you and I know. What do I mean by exchange of matter and energy? That's what I mean by exchange of matter and energy. Primary food production, producing biomass from earth is exchange of matter. Hydrological cycle is an exchange of matter. Carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus cycle is an exchange of energy. Atmospheric gas balancing, nutrient recycling, protecting freshwater resources, seed dispersal, seed pollination, all of these are simply said exchanges between the biotic and the abiotic elements. And therefore, every ecosystem will give rise to these services. These are what are called as ecosystem services. Extremely important for life. And because of this, the planet gets its capacity to sustain life. Because these do not exist on Mars, Mars cannot sustain it. So this becomes a very critical understanding of why ecosystems must be conserved. Look, if we do not get these, if these services are weakened, then the capacity to sustain life is weakened. And that's very important. So like I said, ecosystems can be as small as a dewdrop. This is an ecosystem because it is exchanging matter and energy. There are some microorganisms in that dewdrop. There are some microorganisms on the leaves, and there is sunlight, energy falling, and there is exchange of matter. The ocean, the Pacific Ocean is an ecosystem. This river is an ecosystem. This single banyan tree is an ecosystem. If you look at this one single banyan tree, if you observe it very carefully, it is a wildlife sanctuary for insects. It will have a huge diversity of insects, which we don't think are very good to observe. This locust case is a very dramatic example of today people being afraid of insects. But insects are extremely important in the ecosystem. So it could be large or it could be very small. And therefore what happens is if we do something to the primary producers, if we change the habitat, then over time the biodiversity starts shrinking and the ecosystem services start shrinking. Right? And therefore, coming to the point, if we want to build a hostel, if we want to change the habitat diversity, then there is something which is going to change here. The food chain will break, the fauna will change, and therefore we have to choose better pieces of land for our buildings and leave a large part of it as possible. Why is biodiversity getting reduced? Of course, one of the biggest culprits is agriculture, but industrialization and mining is typically a huge culprit. Infrastructure, there's a road coming up, there's a railway line coming up. The corridors of the elephants have gone because of the railway lines. They can't cross. Urbanization and construction, aesthetic plantation, it's a huge problem. We want today to plant bottle palms. We want to plant bougainvilleas, but there are so many native trees which are not able to survive because of these. So as long as we are able to manage the plantations, it is good. But if that plantation gets into our forest, then we have a problem. And I'm going to explain that with the SIU case study also, what we saw here. So therefore, an understanding of ecosystem, what we saw here on the left-hand side screen and what we see on the right-hand side screen, exactly equal. That's a flow of water. And yet, the photograph on the right-hand side of the screen is not an ecosystem. It is not doing all of what this photograph on the left-hand side is doing. The photograph on the left-hand side is doing the primary food production, hydrological cycle, carbon cycle, all of these things which we looked at. The photo on the right is not an ecosystem because it is just a transport of water. It's only one single human use, while neglecting all the other critical human uses which the rivers have given us. Yeah. I just want to skip some slides. Nature and economy. Yeah, I wanted to show the what we use in the economy, and because we have so many economists and professors of economics here, of course you know what we do, right? So one of the most important is the non-renewable resource, which is the fossil fuel. Most importantly for any kind of industrial production, the modern economy is based on industrial production. We need coal, we need minerals, we need all of that. We need a lot of renewable resources. For example, land, we need solar energy, we need gases, we need water, soil, fish stock, forest, so on and so forth. So many other. Then we need the global public goods, which was the clean air, the flowing rivers, the oceans, which does not belong to any one country, but it belongs to the entire planet. and therefore these are also essential in the economy. And finally, the ecosystem services, which we looked at in the earlier slide. So these are all of that. Look what is happening here. On the right hand side, on the left hand side, the number 1 and number 2 are the inputs to our economy, and these have got an extrinsic value. We assign a value to them. Steel costs 100 rupees a kg because that is the equilibrium point between demand and supply. If there is no demand for steel, steel will be given free of charge. Like there is a lot of demand for air, but there is ample supply of air, therefore air is not charged, thankfully. We don't have to pay to breathe, right? So these have got an extrinsic value, the non-renewable interest. On the other hand, the right hand side has got a life-sustaining capacity, and they have got an intrinsic value of the planet. Intrinsic value means the value of that resource being in that place in nature. That one tree being there in Tadoba forest is very important to the entire ecosystem, and that is the intrinsic value. There's no extrinsic value. We don't say that this tree in Tadoba is worth 200 million rupees. No, we don't say that because it's not connected in the economy. So on one hand, when we are looking at the economy in nature standoff, we are essentially talking about the intrinsic value and extrinsic value standoff. And when we want to grow the GDP, we are implying that it is okay to reduce, to deplete the non-renewable resources and to pollute that. Therefore, when the economy starts using more resources, then there is a degradation of the ecosystems which we saw. So the economy is leading to a better material life, but the degradation of the ecosystem is reducing to the life-sustaining capacity of the planet. This becomes the bottom line of our economic growth that we see today. The second last part which I want to talk about, I hope I'm not taking too much time. What's the time down? Yeah, I'll carry on for about maximum 10 minutes, then we'll ask for questions. Do we really understand nature? And the answer, you will be surprised, is a resounding no. We don't understand nature. And I'm giving you a couple of examples. Look at these. These are Nilgiri trees. I'm sure all of you know the Nilgiri trees. They are beautiful to look at, majestic, white bark. They smell nice, all of that. Long back, the government of India brought the Nilgiri trees to India with the hope that it will give an improvement in the agrarian economy. So it was simply brought for two reasons. One is that the oil of Nilgiri is very valuable. It gets a lot of price. And second is the Nilgiri tree is a critical input to rayon manufacturing. So this wood which is taken out from Nilgiri is used as the raw material for rayon manufacturing in India. And the government thought that we did a brilliant job. We brought Nilgiri and we are now going to get a boost in the economy. But without understanding what happens when you get a non-native tree into the Indian landscape. Nilgiris are a native tree. It's a genus Eucalyptus in Australia. And that genus has got nearly 600 species. So eucalyptus is a very large species of flora in the world, on the planet. Now we brought that one tree to India without knowing of the consequences in nature. Today what has happened is these leaves which fall down on the ground, the Indian soil does not have the organisms which decompose that leaf litter. Right? So that leaf litter just sticks in the soil for a very long time, for almost about 6 to 8 years. And soaks up the water. The entire soil becomes marshy and no other vegetation grows there. Huge problem we started facing here in the unmanaged plantations. And so therefore, the leaf litter of Nilgiris is technically equivalent to maybe plastic because it doesn't decompose for a very long time. We did not realize that. The second thing we did not realize is that we did not get any honey. In Australia, if you've been to Australia, you will see that the honey from eucalyptus is very valuable and very nice. But in India, we were not able to get the honey of the Nilgiri trees. And the problem is we did not realize that the length of the tongue of the honeybees in India cannot reach to the point where the nectar is placed in the flowers of the Nilgiri trees. Yeah. So what did we do? We had to go and import the honeybees from abroad. And after that, we started getting the Nilgiri honey. But till then, we were only the Apis serena indica were not able to reach there. The second problem is about the cane toads. This is a cane toad. These toads, if were imported into Australia. Queensland in Australia has got a lot of sugarcane. growing there, and they had a problem of a beetle on the sugarcane. That particular beetle started gnawing at the sugarcane and reduced the capacity of growth. Now the scientists in Australia started looking worldwide and finding out where else is this beetle and what is done. They found in one place, you know, the Havanas, Honduras kind of a belt, they found that this particular cane beetle is there on the sugarcane, and there is this cane toad. This is called as a cane toad, which eats that beetle. So the brilliant scientists of Australia imported these cane toads by truckloads into Australia, and they left it in the farms of Queensland sugar farmers. And what happened? Lo and behold, not a single beetle was eaten by the cane toad. The reason is that the growth, the height of sugarcane in Queensland is far taller than the height of sugarcane in the Havanas and Honduras. So these cane toads were not able to jump to that place. And because they were not doing that, they started eating the beneficial insects in the farm. And that created a problem. Now, Australia is an island country. So it's a country of reptiles. A lot of snakes. The snakes started eating these cane toads. And the scientists were happy. Okay, so we have a control on the population. And the snakes started dying, because they have not co-evolved with the cane toads. They do not have the antidote in their body to take care of the venom, and they started dying. So there was a huge, even today, you Google cane toads problem Australia, you will see a website which shows how they are expanding in range. They are growing in numbers. Their population become a severe headache. Another example of, do we understand nature very close to home in Maharashtra, typically. You know, in Maharashtra, in 1977, the paddy yields, bhat sheti ji hoti na, त्याचे yield started dropping and pesticide use started increasing. Anybody has any clue why this happened? This happened because, and 1977 is very important year. That was the year when frog dissection was made compulsory in colleges, right? And truckloads of frogs were being transported from paddy fields to Mumbai, Pune, and all these educational centers. If you remove the frog from the farm, the frog is a farmer's friend. It's a carnivore. It's an insectivore. It eats the insects which feed on the rice. And when you take that out of the agrarian ecosystem, then you have to use more pesticides and your productivity starts going down. We did not realize that. We do not understand how nature works, the interconnectedness of nature, how they have co-evolved together. All of these things are totally fascinating knowledge for us. Every time we discover something new, and then we realize, oh, this is a big mistake that we have done. And that's the reason why it's important to conserve biodiversity and physical habitats as they are without putting our knowledge into it. So yeah, finally, the last part which I wanted to say is from admiration to conservation. You know, today you see everybody posting photos of wildlife on the Facebook, on Instagram, and everywhere. We love nature. We love the seas. We love the rivers. We love the wildlife. But that's purely admiration. Can we move from admiration to conservation? And this is exactly what we did at Symbiosis International University. Thanks so much to the leadership that we have at Symbiosis. They were very quick to understand the wealth that we are sitting on. And that was the natural capital. This natural capital, Dr. Majumdar felt that it really can be enhanced. And the small team which he brought together, we are now doing this particular thing. And I typically want to discuss one case of the Bandhara that we have. Most of you would have seen the Bandhara. So yeah, this is a slide. All of you know this. I'm not going to show you that. Yeah, this is the Bandhara. If you stand near the parking lot, if you stand at that viewing gallery, you will see this Bandhara here. It's a beautiful Bandhara, and there are two Bandharas actually. So this is Bandhara number 1 and this is Bandhara number 2. And all this is a watershed area, and all the rainfall is caught here, and we use this water for hostels and our administrative purposes. But there's something wrong with this. And there are actually two things which are wrong with this. So one is, all of this is a monoculture of trees. All of this which you see. Very few other trees are there, but most of it is just one species. It's the Gliricidia sapium tree, which is a non-native tree. It was brought into India as an energy plantation by the British and widely used by the Indian Ministry of Environment till about 15 years ago, when they realized that Gliricidia is not working in Indian ecosystem, and it's just spreading. It's become invasive. We have a invasion of Gliricidia sapium today in most of our hills around Pune. Also in Betar Tekri, if you go there, you see that. One. Second is this Bandhara had very deep waters. You know, the depth of water here is very, very deep. So therefore, there is no sunlight reaching there. Right? No sunlight reaches the bottom, and because there is no sunlight reaching the bottom, all the organic matter which goes down and sits as the silt is not useful. It dies. You know, the organisms cannot live if they are not able to get energy, and then it becomes silt, which is mineral soil. You have to add organic matter, and therefore there was no habitat diversity because of monoculture and low food diversity because of that. And due to that, we had reduced diversity at the Bandhara. Okay, so here you see the Gliricidia sapium flowers and pods in one season. It all happens in February. So you'll see this beautiful light purple colored flowers, all of that. Very low insect diversity. Regeneration of Gliricidia. So they the pods fall to the ground and start regenerating. And therefore you'll see only generalist pods. They were not the specialist pods. And because there is no sunlight, there is no rooted vegetation. There is no moss and algal diversity. Very low fish breeding. Low organic matter, aquatic life goes down, and you'll see only among the birds, you will only see the divers. You'll see the cormorants and you will see the ducks who can dive in deep water, not the ones who can wade in shallow water. They were totally absent. So we looked at this and we said, what can we do to it? So this is the cross section of the lake at the Bandhara. And as you see, you know, this is very deep here. This is extremely deep, but here it's also very deep. So the first thing which we did is we reduced the depth here and we made it shallow near here. And then we brought plantations and we made a lot of plantations of reeds, especially reeds. Lavai आपण ज्याला मराठीत म्हणतो ते reeds, Taifa, Neer Brahmi, Kardal, Alu, all of these are wetland vegetation plants. So we brought them and planted them. Then we created perches, असे rocks केले ज्याच्यावरती birds can sit. Right? So we made the slopes shallow. We added organic matter on the slopes. See, Gliricidae ji pana hoti, we put them onto the slopes because the slopes had fresh rock kind of soil there, and we had to add the organic matter. So we added organic matter to the slope and we planted aquatic vegetation and made the perches for the birds. Right? So we created habitat diversity, we created floral diversity, and we were just waiting for the faunal diversity to come. Then in the monoculture of the trees, we did selective removal of Gliricidia. Even today, we are undertaking that program. We take out one tree and plant another native tree there in an area of 20 feet by 20 feet. You go to another tree and remove that. Then we did soil improvement measures. We made a lot of small bunds because you see the steep slopes there, and when the rain falls there, the soil washes off into the Bandhara. We wanted soil to stop there. So we created small bunds made of rocks and stones, handmade, no cement, nothing, and added organic matter there. Soil moisture conservation, stone bund to plantation of native trees, and allowing grasses, shrubs, and herbs to. Again, what we did, only two things: habitat diversity and food diversity. Over time, so this is the before photograph of the Bandhara which you see. Over time, so we saw the ecosystem restoration because we created these two things. We saw the stages of succession of the ecosystem. So immediately in the first year, we saw moss, fungus, and algae started coming. Sedges and reeds started growing. Rooted floating vegetation, which we introduced, started thriving there. The second stage, fish started spawning more. Aquatic life, the crustaceans started coming up. We had a turtle which we found there. And the third stage, we started getting the amphibians and the reptiles. And finally, all the diving birds, the wading birds, the shore birds, the insectivores, the raptors, everybody started coming there, and we started seeing that. Right? There you are. After. So this is the Indian flapshell turtle which was photographed by one of our students. These are the perches which we made. So this perch, now you can see the kingfisher sitting here. You can see the perch. When you have a perch in water, it is safe for the birds to sit. And then we have birds of prey. We have the owlets, we have the Eurasian eagle owl, we have the buzzards, kestrels, shikras, short-toed eagles, crested serpent eagles. We have three types of kingfisher. We have the pied kingfisher, the common kingfisher, and the white-throated kingfisher. We have lapwings, water hens, green sandpipers. We have the greater painted snipe, which is a rare bird here in these parts. spoonbills, all of these started coming here, and we have observed this in that. The other activities which we do, so we are doing plantations along with Dr. Mrs. Muzumdar. Then we are doing introducing shrubs, protection of grassland. We are identifying ecological hotspots and naming them. So Shilpa, our team member, has bought the camera traps for night activity, wherein we have found activities of civet cats, of mongoose, of porcupines, of all of these kind of things which are nocturnal animals. We created light tents for moths. So we just put a bed sheet and a light at night, and the moths are attracted in their breeding season. And then you take a count of the moth diversity. Signages for the trees, butterfly gardens created. We made 3 butterfly gardens, nature trails. Most importantly, we were training our security personnel and our housekeeping staff. And then finally, we made the field guide for SIU. So there you are. You know, so everybody went gaga over what Symbiosis was doing to its fauna. And there you see Shilpa. So she was a key player in this entire team of ours with Dr. Rao, me, and Shilpa. So Shilpa is the feet on the ground. She's actually doing all the training and all of that. And then we were able to publish this book under the guidance of Dr. Muzumdar of Symbiosis International University, and it's really appreciated. If you take a look at this book of fauna of Symbiosis International University, it is actually the fauna of Pune city, you know, because Symbiosis International campus is representative of what existed in Pune city some time ago. So if you have this one book in your handbag, and when you're traveling in Pune, you'll be able to see all the fauna which you see in Pune city there. There you are. We have the owlet. All these are photographs from our campus by our students. All our students are helping Shilpa in photographing. So we have a rose finch, we have these woodpeckers, we have the spotted owlets, we have these butterfly gardens which we made, and we have beautiful butterflies breeding here. Yeah, that's a butterfly garden which is just behind the water fountain in the main road. So here Isaac Keemkar, he's the butterfly man of India. Isaac Keemkar, you would probably know him. He's written The Butterflies of India. He was guiding us, and Shubha Lakshmi, who is the moth lady of India, she was guiding us in creating the butterfly garden. So today we have 130 birds, 8 amphibians, 18 reptiles, 40 species of butterflies, and 16 mammals. Can you believe it? This is existing, cohabiting with our 12,000 students which live on the campus, with the flora, the thousands of trees which are there on the campus. And that is what really constitutes a biodiversity, right? So I'm coming to the end. This is my last slide, and I wanted to just show what Ralph Waldo Emerson said. What is a weed? A weed is a plant whose virtues have not yet been discovered. That's it. So we have to stop calling weeds weeds. They are something that we have not realized. And that's the reason why I think that we should be all involved in conservation, not admiration. So we have to be selfish. We have to support our own conservation and support our own survival. Thank you so much. That's the end of my presentation.
Wonderful session, great session, Dr. Gurdas. I think we've discovered so much more about Laure than, yes, Dr. Jain, we must have a credit course on this. That's what his suggestion is on, conservation. Vidya ma'am, Muzumdar sir, any reactions, any questions?
My request to all of you is, on Environmental Day, let us salute 3 heroes of SIU campus who have created beautiful biodiversity. Dr. Mulkar, Dr. Rao, and Shilpa Aute. Please, thank you so much.
One more thing, Gurdas, it was an excellent presentation. I mean, I've left all my meetings, I've told everybody that I'm not going to be available for this 1 hour. It was just phenomenal. And I think we should include this as the best practice for NAC. No other university will have this kind of wonderful things that we have done. So I just sent a message to Dr. Bhama.
Ma'am, it would be a model for corporate also, ma'am. This is mind-boggling.
Absolutely. And my only one, reaction that I want to give is that while I visit Muzumdar sir, who's living on the campus during this COVID period, we see a lot of, we saw a deer. I mean, I didn't see it, but someone spotted a deer there, and, several other porcupine. My question to you is that when the human habitation reduces, Is it that these kind of mammals and other species? I mean, do their numbers increase? Is there any kind of theory? Because why is it that when there is no humans around or less number of people around, you
Yes.
see more biodiversity, especially in the animals and birds. Birds also. I mean, we've spotted more peacocks than what we would spot otherwise.
Absolutely.
And dancing peacocks, I've never seen them dance. I hadn't seen them dance. I and Ada have seen them. But I mean, we could see all that. So is there a correlation?
Absolutely, and there is a very strong correlation because over these years, all these animals have looking at us as a predator. We are not actually at the top of the food chain, but we are today a super predator because of technology. We have weapons, we have guns, we have all of this, with which we can kill the super predator, with which we can kill the apex predator. So we can kill a tiger, we can kill a cobra, we can kill an eagle, and they are the apex predator. Earlier, this was not so, but in the last 300-400 years, so these animals have started realizing that we are their predators, and therefore they are very shy of coming in presence of human beings. However, if you take out humans, all what is available there is food for them, and therefore they will come out to eat that, right? So they will increase their range.
Dr. Narukar, I want to ask one question to you.
Yes, sir.
How do we reconcile the development, human development, and biodiversity, conservation of biodiversity?
Right.
Because
So
if human civilization is to progress, development is required. Roads are required, houses are required, buildings are required. That's one part. Other part is, yes, biodiversity has to be conserved, water has to be conserved, etc., etc. How do we reconcile economy and ecology?
yes, sir. So very important question. And I think the first thing which strikes me is that compulsory courses of ecology and ecosystem must be introduced at school level, starting at the school level, wherein the mind is getting formed. And today what has happened is we look at nature as entertainment. मला समुद्रकाठी घर पाहिजे, मी या उन्हाळ्याच्या सुट्टीत वाघ बघायला जाणार, मी इकडचा धबधबा बघायला जाणार. So today urban life, nature is purely manoranjan, nothing other than that. But if children are taught that this is far beyond manoranjan and entertainment, then they will make the elders not use it in a way which is going to be harmful for their generation. What we are doing is we are leaving a worse planet for our children. For ourselves, we have already done whatever we are doing. So one is that. Second most important thing is we must introduce courses of ecology compulsory in economics teaching, in undergraduate economics and postgraduate economics, and develop.
Absolutely.
Therefore, I suggested to Vidya to start BSc in ecology, ecology, economy, and energy. 3 course.
Yes, sir.
She has not bothered to start it so far.
Sir,
How do you like it?
Yeah, I gave you this.
BSc in ecology. Yes, I saw that book. I saw that book and read some chapters also. Ecology, these are 3 important things. Ecology, economy, and energy. So if some institution can start this course, I think.
Sir, I volunteer. I volunteer, sir.
You are not allowed. Because it comes under science faculty.
But sir, we want to introduce,
Disciplinary course.
we
And
propose
with
to introduce 1 or 2 credits on these things.
Science faculty. And this particular BSc in, this is an innovative course. There is economy, there is ecology, and most importantly, as you said, matter and energy. They are interacting. So it will be a nice thing if someone starts this course.
Yes, sir. Very interesting.
Sir, ma'am, we can't hear you. Ma'am, you're mute.
Unmute. Unmute yourself, ma'am.
Yeah, sorry. So I feel that you all can brainstorm amongst yourselves because you have Gurudas and you have Dr. Rao also.
Yes.
And you all have economics professors, Pratima. So maybe your institution can actually create a blueprint and
Yes,
then
ma'am.
we'll see how we launch it and under which institute. But as sir has been saying this for a long time, and we are, we are so busy with other things that this is just gone on our backyard.
Yeah.
No, ma'am. We're willing to take it out. We can design a blueprint. Maybe give us a month or so, and
Yes, yes.
we'll come back to you.
Please do.
With the blueprint, whether we are allowed or not, at least we can create something that somebody else can do.
Please take this lightly. Who starts this is not important.
We would also like to volunteer.
I do feel, as Dr. Mulkar rightly suggested, these are the courses which should be started right at school level.
Yes, sir.
Right? And slowly it should be upgraded to college and university. Anyway, nice meeting you all. Thank you so much. And wish you a happy Environment Day.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure
Thank you.
having you here. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, everybody who joined. Thank you, Vidya ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, for organizing this amazing session. And
Thank you, sir.
ma'am, if you permit, we would like to invite Mr. Gurudas to Hyderabad. Because we have a place in Hyderabad,
In
which
fact-
will bring in the diversity part of it.
Dr. Jay, you snatched word from my mouth. I was about to request all the directors of off-campus center to create similar ecosystem, natural ecosystem, biodiversity in their campuses. And I'm sure Dr. Mulkar, Dr. Rao and Shilpa will definitely guide.
So actually, we could have this biodiversity clubs on every campus of Symbiosis.
I think Mulkar, SIU has started biodiversity club.
Yeah, we have
Many
started already.
especially
Very much.
students from the School of Photography
Absolutely.
participating in that.
Sir, the other thing is we have sent out
Gurudas, you are not.
saying that we now have expertise in-house. Am I not audible?
Yeah, now
Yes,
you are.
you are.
Now you are. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have sent out a mail to all directors saying that we now have in-house expertise to make butterfly parks. Anybody who wants, just contact us.
So Gurudas,
Dr. Jay,
Sir,
I think Hyderabad is an ideal campus.
sir, we have been talking about having this butterfly garden as a
Yeah.
part of 50-year celebration. I think we have got the solution. So at the earliest, the moment we have this lockdown, relaxed, we would want to pull Dr. Gurudas here to Hyderabad.
Yes, sir, definitely.
and this presentation, I think you should do it on all the.
You have already planted many trees on the campus of Hyderabad campus.
Yes, sir. If I'm allowed a minute, I would share. When we were planning to, get those saplings and all, we took help of the forest department, and they were keen actually giving us variety of plants which are very native in nature to this
Very
land.
good.
They came, they inspected the land, soil quality and all, and 5,000 plus saplings we have done in Hyderabad, sir. And these are all as per the advice of the forest department. So I'm sure when Dr. Nulkar visits us, he would also have comments on that, and will help
Yes,
us to improvise on things.
Sure, sir, definitely. Would love to.
Okay, great.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks once
Thank
again.
you. Thank you.
Yeah, you
Thank you. Gurudas.
Vidya, you continued.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Nulkar. Thank you, Pratima. Excellent, session.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. And Dr. Gurudas, I would like to inform we have a colleague named
Yes.
Professor Dr. Furqan Ahmed. He is
Okay.
engineer by professor and then has done his education in law, and he's
Okay.
a water conservationist. And
Okay,
he's
what's his
working, yes, and he's working closely with the government. I would
Name?
connect
What is-
Dr. Furqan Ahmed. I'll get him
Okay.
connected to you, sir, so that
Okay.
we can work on it. He's
Yes,
an
sir.
excellent individual, and you
Okay.
can very freely interact with him.
Thank you so much, sir. We'll meet up, definitely.
Thank you very much, Pratima ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for coming.
And good number of colleagues from Noida also joined, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a
Thanks,
nice day.
Rajesh. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thank you. I missed in between. I have to attend that other meeting, but I will catch up. And Professor Gurdas keeps on traveling to Bangalore, so I will now
Yes,
look
sir.
forward to see the other side of him.
Yes,
Not
sir.
only
He has
the side of him.
multifaceted personality.
Yes. We have a
Okay.
small fruit garden on our campus. Maybe next time when he comes, I will definitely bring him to campus for a butterfly garden here also.
Yes, sir.
Sure.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Pratima, Dr. Gurudas, and everybody. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Gurdas.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you. Okay, bye-bye.